Hi, thank you guys so much for joining. My name is Maggie Quigley, and I'm a Senior Business Development Manager for International Markets at Userlane, a digital adoption software. Today, we're super happy to have Louise O'Conor with us, and we're going to be discussing digital transformation, some of the misconceptions, some of the major pitfalls, and what your organization can do to make your project a success. Hi, Louise.
Hi, Maggie. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. So, Louise, do you want to give our people here, our viewers, a quick intro? Tell us why you're the expert.
I love it, expert. So I've been digitally scaling and transforming companies for about 20 years, just over across different industries and sectors internationally. I founded a digital transformation consulting and advisory firm with two partners just at the end of last year. And I'm also co-founder of a nonprofit business community, mentor and advisor for startups and SMEs with government bodies, and I'm on a couple of boards and do some speaking. So that's part of it in a nutshell.
Okay, just a couple of boards, nothing too serious. Wow, what a CV. Okay, we are super happy to have you with us today. I can't think of a better person to speak on this topic. So again, my job, basically what I do is I speak to companies worldwide, and the number one reason they come to something like Userlane is because they're looking forward to a digital transformation. They want to stop using PDFs for manuals, for onboarding. They want to stop making their onboarding process so stuffy and boring and manual. But a lot of times, no matter how much information, especially in 2020, no matter how much info is out there about digital transformation, when I have my first discovery call with them, I am constantly surprised by new ways that they have to fundamentally misunderstand this process. So with all the info that's out there, Louise, why are so many startups and bigger companies still failing to do a digital transformation?
So first off, I can tell you, you're not on your own.
Okay.
Over 70% of digital transformation initiatives fail globally, and that's according to Forbes. I mean, it's huge. I think the word itself has just become too ambiguous. It means different things to different people. It means different things to people in the same organization, and what that means to them. So I think there are five main things that I kind of look at in terms of what are the misconceptions of what people think digital transformation is. So the first one is that this is a new concept. I mean, in the history of any business, companies have always needed to adapt to changing markets, customer environments, just to stay competitive. And the difference is that the world suddenly went digital practically overnight. And companies who hadn't started on this journey of digitalization or thinking about the future were suddenly unable to respond quickly enough to the changing environment. So the reality is that digital's been mainstream. I mean, I've been doing it for over 20 years now, and it's started with adapting offline businesses to online or trying out new tools or new different systems available. But actually, everything we do has changed. So in terms of the way we shop, the way we live, the way we communicate, all of that is the everyday customer experience of what we expect from digital. So digital transformation for me is just it's that word that's too big, but it's literally adapting a business to what it is now, to what it can be, to compete in the changing environment. And that's kind of the concept that I think is overseen. People see it as technology. People see it as much bigger things that they have to stop business. So I'll go into some of that. It does touch on every area in terms of strategy, people, processes, operations, customers, and technology. But technology is more the enabler.
Interesting. Yeah, people first, right?
Yeah. So the second part is that starting with technology. So many people come in, I've got this platform, I've just integrated this huge system. I was like, okay, so what are you actually looking to achieve? And that's a lot of the time where people just go, well, we just wanted to do this. And I said, well, you want to do this and this and this. So what's your bigger vision? And for me, technology is always the last piece of the puzzle. Once you understand where it is you're going, then the technology enables you to get there. It's like looking at this journey. Like if you don't know where you are now or where you want to go, what transport's going to get you there? What's your vision? What's your purpose? You can end up anywhere in the world, but you need to understand where it is you're going, where you are now, to map out the journey, and that's what digital transformation does. So I think the reason people also start with technology first sometimes is solves an immediate challenge. So even when we all went online, suddenly we were using Zoom. Now I've been using Zoom for nearly 4 years at this stage, but people suddenly jumped on these technologies, bought a load of licenses, and it solved a short-term technology fix for whatever solution they were looking at. But if you look longer term, it actually causes more inefficiency because now they're trying to integrate systems into their own systems and understand how it's going to work going forward when they're looking at the longer term strategy. And it's hindering the company's ability to be agile and actually adapt quicker when changes happen. So the second part there would be the technology, starting the technology. And the third misconception for me is, it's quite ironic. A lot of people think digital transformation means stopping business as usual. I mean, in history of creating a strategy for a company, nobody stopped business, stopped what they're doing, sent everyone home, and decided to have a big brainstorm on how they were going to go in the future. It's alongside business as usual. Digital strategy and digital transformation is the same. It looks at where you're going to be and then integrates that strategy of where you want to be into what currently exists. The other fourth big one is it's only for multinationals and big enterprises. And that's the word. It sounds so big, digital transformation. But it's so untrue. All it is adapting. It's bridging what is to what can be. That's where I kind of see digital transformation. It allows you to think big picture of where your company wants to be. So I would argue it's for every single company, be it startups. So startups adapt all the time their business models, whether they're going into product sales, whether they're going to SaaS solutions, whatever they're rolling out to be. It's for every single size company and across every sector in the industry. It's just adapting to a world which is now all digital. And then the final one that I always look at is that it's too expensive and takes too long. So no strategy is implemented overnight. It does take time. It takes change of mindset, and that's where we're coming into people afterwards. I'll explain that. It understands that like nothing, when you roll things out, it doesn't have to be expensive if you're understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. In fact, it can actually save you time and money. Like I was saying, if you're spending a lot of resources on short-term random acts of digital, which we like to call them, they're just random acts and pieces of technology that you're adding constantly to this, and you're not having a bigger vision, which means you're going back and spending more money on then fixing things and integrating system and hacking things to be able to do what you wanted to do in the first place. So they would be the 5 main things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, especially to point number 5, it reminds me of a saying when my colleague says, there's a region in Germany that's very famous for, I wouldn't say stinginess, but they're very practical with their money. And he always says, I don't have enough money to buy something twice. And the point is, if you're going to do it right the very first time, right?
Yeah.
It costs so much more to make these random acts of digital. That's great.
But I would also put out there when someone says that is that what will it cost you if you don't? Because
Yeah.
if your company goes extinct, which we've seen with so many, I mean, look at the Kodak, look at the travel company. You've got companies left, right, and center going extinct because they haven't adapted. So there is a fine line between what you want to spend, but what it'll cost you in the long run if you don't spend something. You just have to know the approach to take and how to do it correctly.
Yeah, standing still can really be a killer. You're exactly right, especially with the innovation perspective. Okay, so that was really helpful in terms of the biggest mistakes that companies make. I mean, standing still and kind of getting struck by the meteor when it comes. That's one way of looking at it. What are other major faux pas or mistakes that companies commit?
So the first one is, I think I mentioned or touched on it there, it's not knowing your starting point and not having a vision. I think the term vision, values, mission, your big strategy, it was seen as fluff. And it's kind of, oh, that's the marketing thing. We create a vision and a mission and we write this down on our website and we never visit it again. The biggest change in that digital transformation is you really are looking at what do you want to be as a company? Who do you want to be? Who are you engaging with? What is that big vision that you have? Because that's going to set the tone for your strategy, for bringing people on the journey, for the communication, and to drive your revenue in the future. So it's the biggest pitfall, I think, is people not spending the time on the what ifs. What if we could be this? And for me, that's the starting point of any change or any strategy session. It's what are we looking to do differently? And I think the transformation plan itself is actually just the roadmap of getting you from where you are now to that vision of where you want to be. So some of the other major, I see, pitfalls are not taking time to understand your customers. Where are
and what
they?
exactly they want.
Where are they? What do they want? Sometimes they don't even know what we want. We didn't know that we needed the internet. We didn't know that we needed mobile devices. We didn't need any of that. We could have done business, but it's the evolution of just society adapts and it changes and you go with that. So it's taking time to understand your customers now, what touch points and channels they're on, but also what they could do differently. What could you do to something to really delight them or go, wow, that's something different. Then I think the third part is communication. So we'll touch on this when we go into people, which I'd like to expand on a little bit more later, but communication both internally and externally is so important. You have to bring people on the journey. If you're changing as a company, you need to let your customers know what that change is, even if it's a rebrand, a reposition, or it's a complete business model shift. If you don't let people know what's happening, they're not going to understand who you suddenly are and will no longer want to do business. And internally, if you don't bring every single person on the journey going, this is our vision, get behind it, people make it happen. So I think that's the biggest part, communication of why you're changing and what it's going to give and empower people in. I think another part is the legacy systems and siloed departments. Legacy systems are there, and so people say, "Oh, we'll just hack this, and we'll talk about this, and we'll fix what we have and adapt it to change what it is." So one of the biggest pitfalls is not looking at current systems, looking at what system could work, and changing rather than spending half the time hacking an older system to do something it wasn't designed to do in the first place. And then you're actually creating other faults, and it'll start breaking in different areas. So I see this all the time. I can hear you laughing. So obviously, but it's just the comment, like it's the understanding of you can't keep hacking a system if it's not supposed to do something, because you're spending more time and more cost and more energy on trying to fix something that could actually have a solution out there already. I think the other major one is, don't assume a big problem needs a big solution. Sometimes smaller things, and everyone thinks this is a big, big, big change and it's a big process. It doesn't have to be. I mean, if you're looking at saving, it depends on what your goal is. If you're looking to save time, putting in an automation system for invoicing, putting in an automation chatbot to answer quick queries, that's going to save you time and money of the cost of people who are answering the same questions over and over. So any repetitive task can actually be implemented in a really quick and easy way. There's a lot of really low cost implementation and AI tools that you could apply. But the challenge is there, it's a technology that enables the challenge, which is the time consuming tasks. So I think the biggest part is what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking to grow, reduce costs, increase revenue, become more competitive? You have to know what it is you're trying to do and be and achieve in order to understand then where to start and how to approach it.
And I think one of our biggest concerns when Userlane first came onto the market, everybody's got this big Terminator-like fear of automation, right? Robots will replace us. We don't want to lose jobs because of automation. And history has shown time and time again, that's not the goal. That's not the problem with the Industrial Revolution. That's not the problem with digitalization. It's about making the humans who are performing these jobs, making their lives a little bit easier and automating these tasks. So for us too, it hits a chord with me particularly, because we always say Userlane, it's about people. So you've mentioned a few times, of course, I'm really excited to hear, what exactly is for you this philosophy of people first when it comes to digital transformation? What does that mean to you?
So I think you touched on a point there in the Industrial Revolution. This is the fourth Industrial Revolution. If we look back and take a step back to the first Industrial Revolution, it was the same fear from people. Machines are going to take over our world. We don't need people anymore. People are always the drivers of change. The challenge is that some people don't like change and they don't like to adapt. So if you don't, that doesn't mean they can't. It just means they need to be brought on a journey, because at the end of the day, people are what makes it happen. They have the emotional connection, they have the understanding and empathy that machines don't have. I mean, maybe they will one day, but they don't at the moment. And even if they do one day, we'll still have a different skill set that we'll need to program them in the first place. So there's always a need for people, and people are actually what make digital transformation succeed. And without them and without the right mindset, it just can't work. So I think one of the biggest two biggest points that I would see within what you need within people is it's a mindset and skills. So when I say mindset, it's about leadership. When you have a vision, the top level have to understand where they're going and they have to be committed. If they're not committed, the rest of the company will feel they're not committed and it won't infiltrate through and it can't succeed. So if you're looking at leadership, the strategy, you've got to change the culture. And the end goal of the business will be adopting a culture with a digital threaded through their DNA. It's through and through. They have to feel that it's digital. So the very first one is in the mindset. It's it's committed from buy-in from top senior executives and communicated that throughout the company. Second one is that communication. It has to be clear. It has to be visible engagement. You need to give them regular access to information, milestones, keep visibility that everyone is engaged in this, and you're empowered to make this happen. And that's the third part, which is empowerment. If employees, if they see how their involvement can help progress the transformation, it not only engages them in the process, but it also enables them to see how it impacts the success of the business overall. It creates like a shared purpose, which is the main point of any change, and it aligns everyone on that journey. So there's stats out there, I can't remember where I read it, but like 12.5% of organizations, they're 12.5% more likely to succeed if they've actually communicated with employees, which is huge in terms of their success. I know McKinsey also did a report at one stage where companies that fail to engage line managers report only 3% success in comparison to those who do at 28%. So that's a huge percentage difference. I mean, that's 25% bigger chance just from communication alone. And then a general other stat is the empowerment piece, is where empowered employees, they feel engaged and part of the journey. And there's actually stats to show that when they feel motivated, the success in digital transformation is 91% versus 37%. If you don't actually feel empowered that you're part of that difference and making the difference within the organization. So
wow, okay.
Really, really big stats to show why people are so important and encouraging them. And it's why that stat of 70% of digital transformation initiatives failing is because this part, if you don't bring people, and I say it a lot, but bringing people on the journey, it's a change of mindset. You're asking somebody to believe in something big and show them that they're empowered to be part of that. And then it comes to skill set when you're talking about people. There's so much demand for the digital skills and the know-how and the experience. I think it's really important to bring people in sometimes for that in terms of business advice. Where do we go if we don't have the skills in-house? And it can be hard to find, attract, and retain talent when there's so much competition looking for the same skills out there. So businesses facing that need to find new ways of encouraging and upskilling their existing teams. Most people want to learn. It is actually quite an innate thing. They want to be able to do well, feel good, and learn something new. So there's ways of bringing people, trainers in, or providing different learning and L&D development. It's really, really important to upskill staff that are currently there. It just makes sense. And it means that I think the biggest part within digital transformation is making a company agile and the ability to constantly renew itself. So why not give employees the same opportunity to do that by upskilling them and allowing them to adapt to what's coming? So for me, that's one of the major reasons, like people is just the core of any change process.
Now, one topic that you and I had discussed another time was the importance of kind of creating champions within each department. So in my job, I normally have a really concerned product manager who designed the world's best software for XYZ and no one knows how to use it. Or I have, one of my favorites was a customer success manager in the US who could not go on vacation because his job was so important to answer support tickets. And all he said was, please let me go snowboarding. And so his entire goal was to kind of get the rest of the company on board. And so I try to connect with as many people as possible within the organization to make sure that all the stakeholders realize the impact that this could have. So from the opposite perspective, the other side of the table, for these companies that I'm coming in contact with, what is the best way that these experts or champions can create other champions and stakeholders throughout the organization?
So thank you for reminding me of that conversation, because it's how I approach every single project. Like even a company we're working with at the moment, somebody has to lead it. So if you have somebody leading with the leadership of understanding what that big vision is, the only way you can bring each of the departments and people on the journey. So you've got the mindset that I talked about and the skills, but you need somebody within on the everyday who's actually really believing this, is really, really excited. So normally it doesn't have to be a manager within a department. It can be one person goes, I will take control of that. I will run that. That person will then feed into the project manager, whoever's leading the digital transformation within the organization. And they can come up with ideas. They can have the communication, access to the data, the different milestones, what's happening, feed that back into their own department so that everybody feels aligned. It can't be one person speaking to 2,000 people within an organization. It has to be felt among the organization that we all have a say in this. When we're creating that bigger, what does that look like? What do those measurements and metrics look like? What are the milestones that we're all going to be really proud of at the end of every quarter, for example, that we can all celebrate together and just go, right, we've reached milestone 1, we're at the next one. So what is that? And those champions are crucial. And that's how you go about bringing people on the journey. You create that vision and you create those champions and you find those champions. Like, even if they hadn't identified themselves before, you'll see it in a meeting where somebody's eyes will light up that you're doing something different. That's your champion, and they will be your advocate throughout the journey as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point about kind of noticing how people's eyes light up, right? Like, from a sales perspective, my favorite part of the job is talking to the people. And I am constantly surprised by how maybe the CFO, who only comes in at the end to talk about the negotiation, my favorite part, how they get super excited about this project and they weren't involved from the beginning, but now they see the potential for the company. So it's also, I think, about tapping into these people's passion, right? They see the impact that it could have for their lives, how it would make their life easier. So I really like that point as well.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, so Louise, I think that we've had some really great takeaways today. What would you say are the 3 top points that people should keep in mind as they try and brave their own digital transformation projects?
So first is know your why. If you don't know the why you're changing, what the vision is, where you're going, it can't happen because you don't know where you're going. You don't know how you're going to get there. You don't even know when you get there whether you've actually reached there because you haven't set that as a goal or a vision. So I think your very first point is know your why. The second one is only add technology after you know that. It's only the enabler. Depending on what that vision will look like, you then find out what needs to happen across departments, and then you choose the technology to enable it. And I can't actually emphasize that enough because I just see it too often where you're undoing everything you've done because the technology has been wrong from the onset. And then the third part is, to repeat myself, is to bring people on the journey. I mean, this year, our whole year has been a year of survival. It's been a year unprecedented, even though I hate using that term because it's so overused.
Unprecedented times.
It really is. But like, our whole economy, way of life, business, it's permanently changed and it's disrupted and it's not going back to anything before. So if companies don't look at where they want to be and bring people on the journey, they're just not going to survive. So I think that's the biggest part. Now is really exciting time. You can reimagine your business and reimagine what it could be and then bridge the gap. That's all digital transformation is. It's bridging what is now to what that can be. And that's very exciting.
Now, Louise, I think really, really great lessons for everybody watching because there is no industry that has not been touched by this. A last question from my side. As far as companies who are interested in making these next steps and finding their why, what resources would you recommend to people to kind of begin this journey? Where do they even start?
So there are loads of different frameworks, and every company and every agency or consultant, they all have their own approach. I think it's understanding that when you're in a sector and you're trying to see that bigger vision, reaching out to a couple of different people in terms of frameworks that they have, but also industries that they've worked in, and understand how they bring people on journey. Because there's a lot of people who might not align. It's like hiring the right person for the skill set, but not the culture. If that connection isn't there within the culture where you can actually work together to get the most out of the sessions and the understanding of where you want to be, that's the most important part, Maggie. So frameworks are one thing, and it definitely brings you through a process. But even within Beta Digital, we've 3 easy, really steps. It's understand where you are now, envision where you want to be, and then build a plan to transform. Like, it's that simple. If you don't know the starting point of where you are now, where you want to be, and how you're going to get there, it's the 3 main pieces. So that would be the starting point that I would approach in any company. And analyzing that in terms of your digital maturity and where your company is now is the biggest part of starting the process. And then you look across the people, processes, technologies, operations. But there will be gaps in some areas and really strengths in others. I'm working with a company at the moment that the technology is phenomenal, but actually they don't know how to implement it to the biggest quality, which is so ironic because they actually did start with technology, which goes against what I'm saying. But they actually had brilliant infrastructure already in place, but they don't know how to bring anyone on the journey. So every company is at a different stage. So it's understanding that digital maturity and the starting point that's the most crucial.
Okay, and I think for me personally, my biggest takeaway is this concept of, can you afford to stand still? You might be a little scared to begin this journey, but can you really afford to do nothing? And I think that's a question a lot of companies have to ask themselves. So Louise, thank you so much. This has been really illuminating. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with our viewers?
My pleasure. Just thank you for having me.
Okay, so if anybody has questions about digital transformation, keep in mind Louise's amazing CV that she mentioned at the beginning. I think she's got plenty of resources to share. Questions about Userlane, feel free to get in touch with us via the website or LinkedIn. We're always happy to have your questions and thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining.